screening him and me, they went with me. That's a big advantage in November to have a 3% head start against Lee Zeldin in a race that will clearly be a close one.
Anna? You're better at pouring water, Mark? Mark, as long as you're
Mark's
up,
better than both of us, though.
as long as you're up, there are people that have questions to collect. Okay. Anna, rebuttal?
The fact of the matter is that the Truman Fellow, my campaign manager is a Truman Fellow too, and so are most of the kids that have worked on the Hill. It's a series of lectures that you attend, and it is awfully different than actually having been on the ground in the Middle East and worked in Africa as I have, and have a graduate degree and an undergraduate degree, speak a number of languages, and have actually worked in a setting like the UN and having to resolve some very tricky international issues, such as mounting the first elections in Congo in 40 years, which is what I worked on at the UN for several months. That's the kind of deep foreign policy knowledge you have to understand the issues that are facing us today.
All right, next question. What have you done to make Long Island a more affordable place to live?
Great question. So, for me, this is personal, right? I have 3 young kids. I have seen the kids who I grew up with, so many of them move away. We had our high school reunion for Port Jefferson High School a few years ago, and so many kids posted on Facebook, I wish I could be there, but I live in Tennessee. I wish I could be there, but I live in Texas, et cetera, et cetera. It's 2 aspects of this. One, it's creating jobs, making sure we have good paying jobs. That's exactly what I've done as I've helped to launch companies coming out of our research laboratories, as I worked on the board of the United Way to make sure that more and more of our school districts have STEM programs. This is what we need to do to prepare our kids for the future. We can go on and on, but unfortunately we only have 30 seconds left. But the second critical piece of this is making sure we have housing that people can afford. I brought together the first regional summit on affordable housing, first Suffolk County Housing Summit 2 or 3 years ago. We brought together developers, brought together civic groups, brought together the towns, et cetera, to work on how do we put together a plan, how do we make sure we're getting new housing developments built. I'm on the board of the CDC of Long Island, where I was until a few months ago. The CDC was the largest developer of housing, affordable housing here in Suffolk County. So I've had practical experience with it and policy experience.
Anna?
One of the biggest issues around affordability and living on Long Island is taxes. And that was my #1 goal as I got elected to the town board, was to make sure that we would create government and government services that were actually affordable to the people that are the backbone of the town of Southampton, and not raise their taxes, but make sure that their services were not compromised, that they were in fact improved. So that's what we did. We reorganized government, we cut multi-million dollars out of what was wasteful spending, and we improved our senior services. We brought services for veterans, and we created affordable housing and got beaten black and blue for doing it, but we did it. And we got some of the best affordable housing on the East End approved by 5-0 votes. That was bringing people together who were not willing to work together before that. And the Clean Water Center is probably going to be one of the top job creators. It already is. It is combating a critical environmental issue while it is creating jobs, educational opportunities, and the same with the Riverside Flanders overlay district and that development plan that is going to bring over 2,000 units of housing, and half of those will be affordable to a district that wants it, that welcomes it, that worked with us, that we brought into as part of the project. That's the kind of thing that needs to be done district-wide.
I'm going to ask both candidates to please pay attention to the timing on these questions, because I see there are lots of them. So, are we in a rebuttal state?
Yeah, I'll just say that I think the federal government can play a role here as well. And right now, we do not have a leader in Congress who has any background in growing the economy, and we do not have a leader in Congress for this area who has any background in housing. And you see the result of that. We have a congressman who's focused on everything but growing our economy, creating jobs, and making sure we have the kind of housing we need. We need to make sure that the federal government is focusing on making sure that the right kind of housing is built. The federal government, we could change federal housing FHA rules to allow, which now favor single-family homes, to move more towards apartment styles in the right places, to make sure that kids have, does that stop there? I want to respect the time. Okay. Okay.
So I'm just gonna collect any questions as I go back. I'm not sure if we'll get to them, but we'll do our best. Questions?
Anna?
I'll go for mine.
Rebecca?
I think we all agree that affordable housing needs to happen. It's awfully hard to get it done when you're elected in office and you get beaten up for doing it, but we got a great affordable housing project done, and the one in Riverside, Flanders is going to be an actual transformative project there, and it's going to be done sustainably, and it will create over 1,000 units of affordable housing in the town of Southampton. That is something that we got a 5-0 vote on after working for 6 years to get it done. That's the kind of work we need the federal government to help us with.
Next question. Why are you the best candidate to relate to the average family living on Long Island who is struggling to make ends meet?
Long Island is a great place to live if you're well off. It's a challenging place if you're middle class, and it's a darn near impossible place to live if you're poor. I grew up here in a middle class family. My mom was a teacher, and my dad was an engineer. We took loans. I took loans to go to college and law school. I spent most of my career working in the public sector. The last few years, I've done well helping to start and build companies. And I believe we need to make sure that there's a pathway for all of our kids to have an opportunity to get good paying jobs. We are better off as a society, we are stronger as a nation when we take advantage of the God-given abilities of all of our people. And we need to make sure that we are harnessing that ability. One way to do that is to make sure that our kids have the opportunities to engage and to be part of and to be educated in a way that allows them to take those jobs in the future. Another thing, of course, is to make sure that those jobs in the future, those higher paying jobs, are created right here. That's what I think people want: opportunity, hope, and the ability to raise their kids, and so their kids can afford to be able to stay here when it's time for them to choose whether to stay or whether to go.
Because I've raised 4 children in this community, I devoted my career and my work and my life to creating opportunities for others who didn't have them. For me, it has been my guiding passion of my life. My mission in life was to make it so that people who otherwise were not given opportunity had someone fighting for them to give them opportunity. That's why we started Hayground School. That's how I ran the Child Care Center. That's why I ran for the town board, was so there would be someone in town government that was actually there fighting for families that otherwise did not have someone fighting for them, creating jobs for them, creating affordable housing opportunities, creating affordable agricultural land, making sure that taxes were being held down, making sure that our environment was protected, and creating opportunities for families that otherwise didn't have them. I've lived that life. I've raised 4 kids doing that. And that's the representation that I've always stood for and will continue to stand for.
I'm raising 3 kids right now. My wife is a Presbyterian minister, and she runs a not-for-profit that helps people get furniture who can't otherwise afford it. She started about a year ago, and it's been an amazing opportunity to realize that even when given the stresses of everyday life here on Long Island, we all are really blessed. There are folks who are dealing with mental illness, veterans who have been unable to get jobs because of the stresses they've been through and the physical stresses. And we've seen that through the furniture project by delivering furniture to those who can't otherwise afford it. I think it's critically important that the member of Congress be able to stand up for all members of our society, because we need everyone's contribution to lift us up.
And I think it's critically important that we have someone in Congress that actually has a track record of having done that, and having done it in government, because that is a whole other ball of wax. getting it done in government and making sure that people who otherwise do not have a voice, do not have someone fighting for them, and actually getting the job done the way I got it done in the supervisor's office, at town hall, and before that, running not-for-profit agencies that were there to do nothing but create opportunities for families that did not otherwise have those opportunities, and has lived that, is what we need in Congress.
Next question. Do you believe the federal criminal justice system is broken?
When it comes to us having an economic meltdown and no one goes to jail, who put our economy at risk, when it comes to a criminal justice system that will imprison kids for having small amounts of drugs more than corporate executives who almost destroyed our economy and put thousands, if not millions, of people out of work, yes, our criminal justice system is broken. We need to focus on making sure that we hold accountable corporate interests who are, and I say this as someone who prosecuted companies and corporate executives, but we need to do a better job of holding accountable those who put our economy at risk. We need to do a better job of making sure that young people in particular, we are one of the most incarcerated countries in the world. We need to make sure we have an ability, particularly when young people are put in jail for nonviolent crimes, that they have an ability to be rehabilitated and brought back to be productive members of society. We have a lot of work to do in our criminal justice system.
$200 billion are spent on a yearly basis in the United States of America on our criminal justice system on all levels of government. Out of that, 1%, just over $2 billion, is spent on defense. I'm talking about public defenders, legal aid. For the last 20 years, the income gap between the public defenders and the prosecutors has only grown. The income has gone down for public defenders. Meanwhile, the caseload for public defenders has risen by over 40%, and the incarceration rate has gone in that same direction. And there are not enough defenders out there to make sure that small criminals that are guilty of misdemeanors are in fact prosecuted that way and are defended that way. And that is at the root of an incredible inequality of in this country, and it has to be dealt with, and it has to be dealt with absolute all parties coming together on this, because this is at the root of what is threatening our democracy and the ability to live an inequality in this country today.
Next question. Please tell us when you became registered as a member of the Democratic Party.
I registered as a member of the Democratic Party when I was 18 years old, on my 18th birthday. My grandfather drove me to Yaphank, and I was involved in the Democratic Party before that. I actually volunteered for the Brookhaven campaigns when I was 17 years old. When I was 18, I said I registered as a Democrat for the first time. I then worked at the Democratic National Convention in 1992, and I remember going to the city for the first time, scared. First time I took the train in myself, I had to find 6th Avenue, and all I could find was Avenue of the Americas. But I made it to Democratic headquarters, and I volunteered, and I've been actually participated in every Democratic National Convention ever since. I've run a number of races on behalf of the Democratic Party, and I brought together a group from around the country to help build progressive power, to work Democrats around the country who are working on great projects who needed to meet each other. We still meet every year to work to share ideas, and we have elected officials and not-for-profit leaders who are building progressive power.
I registered as a Democrat when I first registered to vote. Yes, I did. Not in this state, but yes. And I was a registered Democrat until I had to change my address about 10 years ago, and I left my party registration blank. I needed to work in the town of Southampton, and I think it's a fairly well-known fact that it's hard to get work, particularly municipal work, if you don't have an R next to your name in the town of Southampton. I left mine blank. I had 4 kids to support, and then I was asked to run for town board by our Democratic chair. Why? Because I had led the life and held jobs and devoted myself to democratic ideals, and I had a grassroots following. And I was asked to run for the town board on the Democratic line. As you know, I ran and I won 4 times on that. Then I was asked to register as an independent and help get Democrats on the independence line. I did. I was awfully upset when Tim Bishop was not supported and asked to re-register. I was asked not to. And then when I ran now for Congress, I said, I'm absolutely re-registering as a Democrat that I am.
I'm gonna just ask the next question. I don't think we need a rebuttal on that. Is what it is. Do you support Hillary or Bernie, and why? I'm only reading the questions.
Well, I voted for Hillary. I also voted for 3 of the delegates for Bernie and 3 of them for Hillary because I had supporters on both sides and who were on the ballot, and I voted for them. But I believe that at the end of the day, I think Hillary Clinton is our best chance at winning the White House, and I think that's critically important. I think she's the best person who has a chance to beat Donald Trump. I very much respect Bernie Sanders. I think he's brought a tremendous amount of energy to this conversation. I think he's brought tremendous ideas, and I think we need to harness the passion that he and his followers have brought, including members of my own family, to make sure that we have a winning election here in November. And that's true at the federal level, and that's true here locally as well. I believe that the most important thing now is that we unify in rejection of Donald Trump and Lee Zeldin and the agenda that they bring to the table. And I think we can all agree on that. We need to work together. It's going to be hard work. I don't think it's going to be as easy as everyone thinks it is with Trump. I think that we need to make sure here locally we send a message that rejects the Tea Party agenda of Lee Zeldin and Donald Trump. And I know you all join us, either of us, in doing that.
I think Hillary and Bernie should both be commended for having run both very spirited races, brought the real subjects and the real issues to the forefront, and debated them with great intelligence and great spirit. And boy, what a contrast to what the Republican side has looked like through this entire race. I think there's no question that Hillary is going to be our candidate. I think that she is bringing a level of experience, a level of know-how, a level of compassion that this country needs today. And I do believe that everyone will unify once this process is over at the convention, and that we will be very, very well suited to make sure that the White House stays in Democratic hands, and that Donald Trump is exposed for the absolute fraud that he is, and has absolutely no business going anywhere near Washington to begin with, let alone the White House. And she will bring that level of experience, know-how, and compassion that she has to that discussion, and that will expose Donald Trump for what he really is.
Next question. Hold your applause, please. Should parents opt? Do you want to rebuttal?
Well, I was going to say one thing about Hillary. I served as a White House intern in the Clinton White House, and I was incredibly impressed with the work that she did on healthcare initially. And I think she was sort of fighting that war before anyone else was. Now, it only came to fruition through the Obama administration and Obamacare, but I think Hillary deserves credit for starting that conversation. Now, I think what Bernie has done is advance that conversation and say, now what? And I think in a very important and meaningful way. So I think healthcare is going to be a critically important issue for us as Democrats and going forward to make sure we defend Obamacare and also continue to improve on it.
Anna, is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, I guess I just want to add that, Bernie is a registered independent, and no one seems to have a problem with him running to win the Democratic nomination. I'll throw that in there.
Okay, next question. Should parents opt their kids out of standardized tests, and why?
So I think each family needs to make their own decision on that, obviously, and I wouldn't pretend to speak for any other family or urge other families to do one thing or another. I think the bottom line, though, is that the opt-out movement and the parents who have been passionate about that movement are speaking a important reality, which is that Common Core, as it's been implemented, has been a failure. My kids are going through it right now. Two of my three are in elementary school, and my youngest one's about to start kindergarten in the fall. The most important academic experience in my daughter's life, who's 5 years old, in 5th grade, she's 10, was dressing, when her teacher had them dressed up as historical characters. She became very interested in history because of that. But the teacher actually took a risk in doing that because it wasn't part of the curriculum. It wasn't part of a worksheet. It wasn't something that was going to be on a bubble test, right? The teacher took a risk and did one of the most memorable things that my daughter still talks about. And in fact, we went on our family vacation to Colonial Williamsburg because she was so into history. Kids get excited about learning when they're actually not doing worksheets, but the teachers are reaching them in a way that makes sense for them. Each kid's different. They need to be reached in different ways. Sorry.
Anna?
I think families should absolutely have the option to opt out of Common Core, and as you know, Suffolk County has been a leader in that in New York State, and the number of families that have. But more importantly, what it speaks to is that we have an absolute reform that needs to happen, both how we fund our public schools, how we structure our public schools, and how we support the teachers and the kids. And that is not part of how the public school system works today in New York State. We started Hayground School for that reason. We wanted teachers to be able to teach to their passion. We wanted kids to be able to run with their learning passions too. And we wanted to help kids that were interested in going into life and out into the working world with a different approach, and understanding that it wasn't all about making money. It was about creating social change. It was about upholding social justice. It was about bringing communities together and families together that otherwise would not be together. Our public school system needs to work in that way too, and we need to fund it accordingly.
Well, I think one way to make sure our public school system works is to not start private schools, but to work to fix the public schools. My mom's a public school teacher, was a public school teacher until she retired.